Hello everyone. My name is Eliza. Welcome to my channel. I hope y'all are doing so good today. We are doing my first wrap up for 2026. It does have a couple books from 2025 in it that I need to throw in here, but I think, oh God, how many books do we have? I never count beforehand, and then I'm always counting at the last minute. Give me a second. I think we have 10 books that we're going to be chatting about, and like usual, any books that have come out in a vlog, I'll put them at the end, and then we'll go in the order that I read them. So first book that I finished in 2026 was a short story collection that is The Words of Dr. L and Other Stories. This is by Karen E. Bender, and this one is published by Catapult. Oh gosh, I need to check. Let me check. Okay, it's published by Counterpoint, which is an imprint at Catapult. This short story collection I really enjoyed. It was really interesting. It is a speculative short story collection that really has to do with parenthood. I would say that is the most consistent through line between the short stories. I would say because it's about parenthood, there's also a lot about childhood. We've also got some themes around aging. We've got some themes around control or like power dynamics in those relationships. And again, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I have not heard anyone else talk about this, but I would definitely recommend it. To give you a little flavor of what's in there, the first story is the titular story, The Words of Dr. L. And we are following a woman who wants to get an abortion. And in this reality, there is a way to have an abortion by speaking certain words, but the words are a secret. And there is this doctor called Dr. L that knows the words, and you can schedule an appointment with her and she'll tell you what they are so you can like speak them to yourself and have an abortion. It's like a non-invasive way to have an abortion. It's a way to have an abortion that nobody would ever know about. And because this new access to abortion has come into play, so has a like counter movement to that. And we are living in a reality where there is an anti-abortion movement that has spawned up in the form of a women's group, which feels very tied to current things happening. And that women's group has a ton of government support. So unless you are outwardly against abortion and following all of these laws now that are under the guise of like family values, you don't get like access to medical care, you don't get access to other social services. So our main character is trying to outwardly appear as if she is like a good citizen, because you will be penalized if you're not, but also trying to seek out Dr. L, of which her whereabouts are a mystery, so she can have an abortion. So we're getting this like struggle between her outward and inner self. And yeah, that story was really well done. So if that seems interesting to you and these themes seem interesting to you, I would definitely recommend picking this up. I think the writing was really well done. Every story felt very unique, which I think is hard to do in a short story collection, and I would thoroughly recommend it. So that was the first book that I read, The Words of Dr. L. Second thing that I read was a holdover that I had started last year because one of my friends put this on my TBR to read. She got to pick 5 books for me to read on my own from my shelves, and she picked Red, White, and Royal Blue. This is by Casey McQuiston, and it's published by St. Martin's Griffin, which I think is an imprint. Let me check. I think this is an imprint of Pan Macmillan, but it doesn't actually say in here, which is strange. So I'll check that and put it down below if I'm wrong. This obviously a very famous book. It is a queer romance between the first son of the United States and Prince of England. I get why this is so loved. I did think there was a lot to enjoy in here, and a lot that I did enjoy. I think the romance was very believable. I think it like grappled with things that make sense for these characters to be grappling with. I think they both felt like interesting and real enough characters for a romance. So I enjoyed all of that. I think the writing was also good, but my main issue is this is too long. It's too long. It's 420 pages, I think. And the parts that I think needed to be edited out is too much like romance. I know that sounds strange for a romance book, but okay, there might have been a little bit of an angle shift because my phone ran out of storage, but we're going to continue on. And I think I have enough room to finish this video. So I was talking about this, basically that this had too much romance, which I know is hilarious because it's a romance book. But for me, I was already bought into the romance about halfway through. They had done a lot of writing about the romance, and then it just kept going. And I was like, I get it. They're in love. Like now it's feeling like overly saccharine, and I just didn't like that personally. So that was my only qualm, is I think there's a large amount of emails back and forth between them near the end of the novel. And I don't think any of that really needed to be there. There were enough emails earlier on. I don't think it needed to be there, and I think it should have been taken out because it really messed with the pacing of the book and took me out of it. So that was my one kind of large quibble with it, but everything else was really good, and I get why so many people love this. So that is Red, White, and Royal Blue. Then I picked up a new release as an audiobook for my library, and that is Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash. Actually, let me see who the publisher is on this one because I know it's Big Five, but I don't remember who. Okay, it's published by FSG, and I have heard great things about this, and I love this. I get why so many other people like it. It was one of the books that I was looking forward to in 2025, but it wasn't an independent publisher, so I didn't put it in my anticipated releases video. This one is a very like modern dysfunctional family saga. We're following the Flynn family, and the premise sort of sets it up as the parents have decided to open their relationship, and that has like a lot of collateral effects on the family as a whole. That happens and it does have an impact, but there's so many other things going on, and if you're going into this book wanting that to be explored deeply, you're not necessarily going to get that, although it like pokes its head into the like storytelling from time to time. But there are so many things going on with this family. There are 3 daughters in both of the parents, and all of them are sort of like looking for fulfillment in different ways. And they get entangled in a conspiracy. I'm gonna leave it there. And that's sort of the propulsive aspect of the book. Plot really well done, super fascinating, and I do think this has a lot of modern elements about being online, especially with the 3 girls, and that played out in unexpected ways, I would say. So if you like a dysfunctional family saga that has some humor to it, I think this could be a really good fit for you. It reminded me in some ways of Margot's Got Money Troubles with the tone specifically, so I think if you like that book, you should definitely try this one out. My one major gripe about this is 2 of the daughters I felt like were too similar in my opinion, and I do feel like they got the least amount of airtime, but outside of that, very interesting as a whole. So Lost Lambs was chaotic, funny, great time. I gave it 5 stars. I think that might be the only 5-star read I've had so far this year. I can't quite remember. I think that might be true though. That was Lost Lambs. Let me go back. I need to go back to see what I read next. I'm looking at my laptop down below. Okay, so next up, another library book. I read a lot of library books. So I read Winter, A Story of a Season by Val McDermid. This was an anticipated release for me this year. It's published by Atlantic Monthly Press, which is an imprint of Atlantic. I've never read a Val McDermid book before, although I know she is a prolific Scottish crime writer. And this is a nonfiction book that is pretty short, and it's all about her love of winter. I wanted to read it during the season, which is why I picked it up in January, and I thought it was great. Like it wasn't anything that blew my mind, and this is not going to be a how-to on how to like enjoy your winter more. That's not what this is. It is just like a love letter from Val McDermid to winter and why she loves that season in particular so much. It's very cozy. I think like you get a lot of that Scottish winter atmosphere, which was great. And there were some things that I really agreed with her on that I enjoy about winter myself. And then there were some other things that it kind of made me think about, oh, how do I like show up differently in different seasons at this point in my life? And that was some fun reflection for me to have. So really enjoyed this. If you want something that's like short and cozy and pleasant to read, I think this would be a great pick for you. So that is winter. Then I picked up My Stupid Intentions by Bernardo Zannoni, and this one is translated, it's on the inside, NYRB, you need to put it on the outside, translated from the Italian by Alex Andriesse, published by NYRB or New York Review Books. This one I kind of picked up on a whim because I was in between some library holds, and so I wanted to pick up something else physically for my own shelves, and I picked up this one. I love the cover on this. So NYRB has like two styles of cover. One is like the image in the background with the box in the middle, or they have them like this, where the title and the author are in the corners, and then there's one solid image. This one is about a family of foxes, but we're following one fox in particular, Archie, and he is sold into indentured servitude by his mother to another fox who is essentially a loan shark, but for resources. So he barters resources with other animals who are in need, mainly that are needing food, but he does some other things as well, which really fascinating already. This book is very bleak. You should know that going in. And this book is really grappling with religion. I would say with Abrahamic religions in particular, has a lot of reference to the Bible. And I can definitely get down with that. But this one I felt like was just mid for me, if I'm being honest. This is one of those books where it's like, it didn't really have to be animals. They do a lot of human-like things, but there is this conversation that the book is having of the animals knowing or like feeling the sense of being beneath humans or mankind, and that the animals in this book who know about religion have a strong desire to be human because they think humans are the only ones who can be saved and experience an afterlife. So this book talks a lot about grappling with death and grappling with the knowledge of knowing your death is going to come. It's talking a lot about family systems within the animal kingdom, but again, there are a lot of parallels to humans and what it means to build a connection and to belong and to be a part of a family. And all of that, again, sounds very interesting, but it was just like, for me, so bleak and violent. And I don't know if I got that much out of it for having to read that type of content, and that's probably why it felt mid for me. Like, I would like to feel like I'm getting something really thought-provoking or revelatory if I'm gonna subject myself to that type of story, and I just didn't get that from this. So that was my experience with My Stupid Intentions. I love the title, the cover, but I think this might be one that I'm gonna get rid of. Then I went over to a book that was nominated for the Republic of Consciousness Prize this past year. I'm currently in the process of reading and filming my Republic of Consciousness vlog, so this has just been on the brain lately, but this one is not included in that because it was not long listed. This is Benbecula by Graeme, Macrae, Burnet, published by Biblioasis. And I was really excited that this got nominated because I loved Case Study by Graeme, Macrae, Burnet, and I wanted to pick up something else by him. And the other thing that Biblioasis has published from him recently is like in the middle of a series, so I didn't want to start there. This one was a part of a commissioned 6-part series from all Scottish authors where they write a story inspired by some type of Scottish folklore or history. Graeme, Macrae, Burnet has done that here. He is writing about these journal entries and medical records of a family in which one of the brothers went mad in a small Scottish island called Benbecula. And this is the story that we get. This one, I'm sad to say, also felt mid, which I hate. This might be another one that I'm going to be getting rid of. So we're following the McPhee family in 1857. And like I said, one of the brothers goes mad and kind of does something that you learn about in the book. We get to see his other family members as well. He has a brother and a sister, Malcolm McPhee and Marion McPhee, and then his parents. But the only perspective we get is from Malcolm, the brother. And so we see through his eyes kind of the downfall of his family and how that plays out. And again, like I just don't feel like there was too much to take away from this for me. I think it's well written. I think he's a very talented writer, but it's trying, I think, to say some things about public perception and what role that plays in our lives and what role that plays in violence. But it just it didn't do enough for me in that regard. It felt a little bit half-baked. And then there's kind of like this other mystery going on, which is Marion has disappeared. And I didn't really get why that was put into the blurb, because like the way that it played out didn't make sense to put it in the blurb for me. I am trying not to spoil it. I know that's vague, but it just really does not get much time and space in the book for that being like one of the core mysteries of what's going on here. So yeah, another one that was mid. Enjoyed the writing, but didn't take much out of it. So that is Benbecula. I would be interested in picking up some of the other books in the series, of which I think Val McDermid might be another one because she's Scottish. So read two Scottish authors kind of close together. So that was Benbecula. Then I read She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark. This one is published by Harper Perennial, and I meant to read this last year because I was trying to finish off the Eliza Clark that I had, but I didn't quite get to this one, so I picked it up in January. And this one is a horror short story collection that is very grotesque. There is some gross ass shit in here. So I would be prepared for that going in, but I did really enjoy it. I thought it was very well written. It feels very cohesive. And these do kind of all center around hunger, hence the title, She's Always Hungry. More, I would say, as a placeholder for desire. Like, what are the things that you most desire and what lengths are you willing to go to get them? Which I think is what a lot of her work is talking about. She does do a really good job of, at the end, she talks about all the content warnings for this book if you need to know that going in. There are many, I would say, but one of the ones that I think comes up the most is disordered eating. I feel like I've just been reading a lot of stuff around disordered eating lately, and it's all been really good. And I think this was another really interesting entry for that, and like kind of blowing it up, making it more gross and violent and weird. For example, there's one story where a woman is basically like has a parasite that is making her very thin, even though she is like gorging herself on food. And that kind of evolves into like she intentionally wants to keep the parasites around, and that kind of builds a little bit into something else as well that I won't name. So that's the type of vibe that's going on in here, and I really enjoyed it. So another good entry from Eliza Clark. I will say I do think this is my least favorite of the three things I've read by her and the three things that she has published, and I would still rank them as like Penance is my all-time favorite, then Boy Parts I think is a close second, and then this one third. So that is She's Always Hungry. Then last one before we get into the vlog books is I read a nonfiction on audio called How to Fall in Love with the Future. I think the subtitle, let's see, is A Time Traveler's Guide to Changing the World by Rob Hopkins. And this is published by Chelsea Green Publishing, which is a UK publisher. This author is British. Overall, I enjoyed this book, but there's some things that I would change about it. Let me first tell you what it's about. So this book, it's a climate change book in which the author is trying to inspire you to still feel positive about the future and still feel like we are able to have an impact positively on climate change. And it takes this premise that like if we went globally full send on climate change reform for 5 years, what could the world look like if we had done that collectively? So that's the premise. And I think this book has some good ideas, like 3 or 4 really good ideas. But for me, my biggest issue with this book is the formatting of it. This book is already relatively short, but I think it could be even shorter. And I do think the formatting needed to be changed because it gets so repetitive, and it gets repetitive because of the way that he tried to lay it out. And I just don't think it works very well. So really what he's trying to say is we have entered into this era of pessimism about our individual impact on climate change, which makes sense. Like he's also saying that makes sense, but he's also saying like that is unhelpful because there are all these ways that we actually do have a lot of individual agency, and that the majority of people actually do want to support climate change initiatives. So there's a lot more people that are actually thinking similar to you than you might think, and I think are willing to like act and put their money where their mouth is and put their time and energy where their mouth is, if we could just change the narrative about that being something that is possible and something that we should actively be doing right now. That I think is a wonderful point to lay out. And so he's doing that through this like time traveling metaphor, which is to try and get you to invent creative futures in which you can see the effects of climate change initiatives, to start reasserting your own agency, and then to work backwards. I'm envisioning like this could be a future for our world. What would be the steps to get there in a much more tangible way? And most of the time, a lot of the things that people might invent, there are already initiatives that have been started and have been successful on a small scale that we would just need to scale up, but they need people to invest in them, right? Time, energy, and money. Again, another lovely thing. So that I think is the central premise of the book. That's the thesis. And he does say that over and over and over and over again, which is what my issue is. Then he provides lots of real life examples of people who are already doing this type of work and have already done small scale versions of this climate change activism. So you can get a gauge and start seeing like, oh, there are a lot of people who are trying to make changes and being really successful at it if we could just like rally around them. I think that this book should have been laid out in 2 parts. Here's what my thesis is, basically like an essay on that. And then here are all of the initiatives that are currently happening that I think are worth you taking note on. It's not comprehensive by any means, but I think he tries to like pull some from different areas of climate change activism. That I think would have worked much better. Instead, what this does is it spreads the initiatives out throughout the whole book. And then he keeps reiterating, like, here's how my thesis fits to this one. Here's how my thesis fits to this one. Here's how my thesis fits to this one. And like, we already know the thesis. Like, we're not dumb. We already know the thesis. So let's just get on with it. So overall, I still think people should read this. I think it is very beneficial, but know that it gets repetitive. I got annoyed with that. You might get annoyed with that. Happy to have read this. It has inspired me, which I think is the point of the book. So that is How to Fall in Love with the Future. And then lastly, we have 2 books that I read in my latest Now or Never vlog that came out, which I actually read these in December, but that vlog just came out recently. So I've saved them. So the first one was Before by Carmen. This one is translated by Peter Bush from the Spanish, and this was published by Deep Vellum, and I did not like this, sadly. It is an autobiographical coming of age, and it just didn't work for me. It was so fragmented, and for me, like so on the nose. It didn't have a lot of nuance or depth. So I will be unhauling this. It probably was one that I should have DNF'd, but it's so short and I wanted to fit in a translated book in December because I hadn't read another one. So I just finished it for that reason alone. But yeah, I would not recommend this. There's a ghost story element to this, but again, it's just so short. I would say fragmented autobiographical coming of age is what you need to know about this. So that is that one. And then the other one for the vlog was Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn. This one's published by Scribner. And this one I liked in a lot of ways, but it just lacked something for me. And as I've been reflecting on it more since filming that vlog, I think I've maybe pinned down what it is, but let me first tell you what this book is about. So this book is following, actually also has a ghost story, but it's following a family living in the South. I think they're living in Mississippi. Yeah, living in Mississippi. And the character we get the most of is Jojo, who is a teen boy, young teen boy, who's living in a household with both of his grandparents. His grandfather essentially has raised him, and he is most connected to his grandfather. His grandmother is terminally ill and never leaves her bedroom, really. His mother crashes with them fairly often, but she is very neglectful, not really invested in her children's life. There's his younger sister, Kayla, who is fairly young. Like she's a toddler, I think, something around that. And Jojo cares for her more than Kayla, his mother, does. And then lastly, we have Jojo and Kayla's father, Michael, who's in prison at the start of the novel, but he gets out of prison kind of midway through. And so it's this like family saga. It also pulls in of what it's like for them living in the rural South as a Black family, and Michael is white. So there's some commentary on their biracial relationship and how a lot of people around them have a lot of opinions about that relationship. I thought the writing in this was great. I thought the story itself had a lot of interesting things to think about. There's a lot of conversation around death in this novel. The ghost story in this is Jojo can see spirits. So you kind of get him witnessing spirits, and they're telling him things and asking him things throughout the book. Part of that comes into play with the prison system again, because Jojo's grandfather was in prison, and there is a spirit that Jojo keeps seeing that is very invested in hearing the story of his grandfather's time in prison. There's a lot going on. It's interesting, but I think the reason that I didn't connect with this in the way that I imagined, based on clearly how talented the writer is that the topics that it is addressing, like the prison system, like dysfunctional families, like the American South, all of those felt dated in this book. And this book is dated. I think it came out in like 2017. Yes, 2017. And I think that's why I said in the vlog that if I had read this at the time, I think I would have liked it more. I think that now the conversations around the prison system, the American South, and dysfunctional families have changed quite dramatically since then. And so I felt some of that dissonance with this book. And I do think that's what held me back of being like, okay, so what? Like, I know everything you've been telling me about these before. I want it to go further, because our cultural consciousness about those have gone further than what this book is talking about, which is no shade against the book, because again, like, it came out in 2017, so it was very of its time. But that, I think, is my main issue with it. So I'll leave it there. Watch the vlog if you want to know more, because I do talk about it more in there. But that is Sing Unburied Sing. So those are the 10 books, we did it, that I read so far this year, and a little bit from last year. And look at the colorway on these books. And even this one that's white, it's red on the front. Like, what's going on there? Something was in the water. Thank you for being here with me today as I chatted about these. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, and if so, what you thought about them, or if you're interested in reading any of them. As always, I'm interested to know what you read so far this year, especially the things that you loved. With that, I will see you all in the next video. Bye.